my lecture today is going to talk about the one of the most ancient forms of warfare, which is insurgencies. Insurgency is, can be defined as a group who politically wants to overthrow, has a political ambitions to overthrow the current government, may it be a local government or regime or a foreign government. Their aim is to change the ruling party or the ruling government, and they are willing to use violence for that purpose. Now, they might pursue an agenda which is driven by ideology or religion, or they can be just a group who wants to take power. So there are many reasons for insurgency, and as I said, this is a very old form of warfare, but it was not in the focus of attention. I'm going to talk about why it has become central in the study of warfare and in the focus of military establishments during the last few decades. Certainly from the beginning of the Cold War, what we have seen is the decline of what we call the Great Power War, and therefore we started to put more attention on the phenomena that has since then spread in the world and became more prominent, which is insurgencies and counterinsurgencies, which is the fight against insurgencies. So usually what you have is the forces of the state, which is the ruling government, and the forces of those groups who wants to overthrow the ruling government, and they both clash. The conflict is on many levels. It's on propaganda, and it can be on the diplomatic arena, but it also has a component of fighting. Therefore, it becomes part of what we term as war and warfare. Usually, what the insurgents, because they are lacking the resources of the state, so they rather use tactics of what we term as a guerrilla tactics. Mm-hmm. I don't have to explain here what is a guerrilla. No. It's maybe one of the places I don't have to translate it. So it is hit and run tactics. It's ambushes. It's surprise attacks. And all this because, and then they usually are hiding. It's very hard to locate them for the government forces. And all this means that the conflict continues for a very long time because there is no one decisive act, whether it's from the government or from because the government is not capable of finding them. The insurgents are not capable of overthrowing in one blow the government. So it's a long, usually what is typical is a long conflict. The center of what we call the insurgency and counterinsurgency debate started when the Americans went into Iraq and Afghanistan, and they found themselves in a very long, frustrating campaign of insurgency, fighting against insurgencies. What they did is counterinsurgency, of course. So how to, frustrating because you find yourself as a great power, the most powerful state in the world, basically, with the biggest and most sophisticated military, the American military, but you're unable to finish this insurgency and to defeat it. So the Americans were looking for ways to how to conclude successfully, let's say, these campaigns, and so there was a lot of research in academia and also in the military is how to best to do in a counterinsurgency campaign. At some point, me and my colleague Beatrice Heuser, we had a group of researchers, and we decided to look into various cases of insurgencies and see if some countries they have a certain form of fighting insurgency which is typical for that country. I mean, maybe one country is more rough, and maybe another country is more has a more soft approach, as they say, with trying to work maybe on legitimacy. So we were looking at different cases, and we also looked at how counterinsurgency, how they operate, and if there are differences between those insurgencies and the counterinsurgency, and how they do it. This book came out, and we had really very good people who wrote studies on the different countries. And basically our conclusion was that we see patterns of the same forms of how countries confront and how they cope with insurgencies. And it's very similar to what the insurgencies are doing themselves in many ways. But there is no one particular national style. It is more dependent on the context. Definitely, when you talk about liberal democracies in the West, they have their way in the last few decades where they are very careful not to use excessive force, or they are more careful than other countries. Yeah. Yes, yes.